All right, let's talk about this movie, Crimes of the Future. Hello, my name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse, and I am talking about the newest David Cronenberg film, Crimes of the Future. And if you could not guess by that intro, I have some thoughts on this movie, but let's just talk about what this movie is. Crimes of the Future is the latest directorial installment from David Cronenberg. He's been absent for 8 years, with his last film being in 2014, Map to the Stars. And this film just recently premiered at Cannes Festival 2022, early May, to a mixed response, I think is the most fair. It did get, I believe, about a 5 to 10 minute standing ovation, and it was also marked with a lot of people walking out of the festival. And it's Cronenberg. So we knew this film was going to be controversial, to say the least. The film stars Viggo Mortensen as Saul Tesner, a man who can grow new organs inside his body. He and his partner, Caprice, played by Lea Seydoux, has monetized the ability and turned it into a performance art show. And the film tackles questions of morality within art, sexual pleasure through bodily harm, and an ever-growing reliance on technology, as well as the passion of desire. And as always with a David Cronenberg film, there is bound to be a lot of body horror, disgusting imagery, as well as a heavy usage of practical effects and makeup. How Cronenberg directs a film is the imagery on screen is supposed to be provocative, and Crimes of the Future is no exception. This film is supposed to make you think. It's supposed to have a lot of really disturbing imagery on screen to make you process something. What I will say is the exception, however, is how awful this movie is. I hated Crimes of the Future. And I'm just going to get into some of my criticisms right now, starting with what I think is the biggest sin of this movie is how uninteresting it is. The story meanders through its 100 minutes runtime, and it felt torturous. I could not believe how long this movie felt despite only being 100 minutes. If you had told me this film was 2.5 hours, I would have believed you. The issue is that the film never goes anywhere. The screenplays merely consist of characters filling each other in on the plot of the film so we as the audience can follow along. The world that Cronenberg creates feels so disattached and so confusing, and you just don't understand what's going on from the get-go. And it just makes for a film that just never is able to get its bearing straight at the beginning, and it just keeps falling apart as the runtime goes on. But I think what is maybe so frustrating about this film is it thinks it's so smart, and it thinks that it leaves its audiences pondering, yet everything in the film, it doesn't feel original or groundbreaking. I've seen these themes explored, one, in other Cronenberg films, but in other films from other filmmakers. Nothing feels earned in this movie, which makes the body horror elements, which, by the way, this film has a lot of. This film is disgusting. There is so much surgical procedures going on and such gross, visceral images, yet none of it is thought-provoking or even remotely interesting. It's simply gross for gross sake. And the film never earns that grossness. And for Cronenberg's typical style of grossness being on display and the usage of practical effects that he's always brought to life to bring characters like the Brundlefly to life, this film feels so tame. It feels so generic and uninspired. He simply just captures gross images and puts them on screen without any real repercussions to the plot, which I just found so not even distasteful, but just so uninteresting. I just thought this film was boring in its cruelty and grossness. And that's just an overarching criticism I have of this film. Everything of this film just feels like it was made on autopilot. The screenplay is paper thin. It's supposed to delve into the minds of artists and what is and isn't the limitations of what can be shown in the art. Yet there's no setup for who these characters are. Saul and Caprice's relationship feels so often unsatisfactory because I don't know who these two people are or why I should care about them. None of the characters are fleshed out even remotely. There's actors in this film like Kristen Stewart who just appear in the film, but they're so underutilized. I don't have a real understanding of what this character is supposed to be. They do something with the character later on, which is supposed to kind of drive the third act, but it's so unexplained and just kind of is a throwaway line that it doesn't feel like there's any real repercussions to what happens in this film. Thus, everything feels unearned and muddled. When I'm talking about unearned, it's also the fact that this world feels like it's a dystopian or an exaggeration of a world that we will live in a few years. Yet there's no context for this world that we are in. It feels so disattached from reality that anything that happens in the film that even is supposed to remotely resemble something visceral or something violent or just something disturbing, it just feels alien. It doesn't feel like we can relate to this because it doesn't feel of this world. And the thing that I found most shocking about this film is how uninteresting it is. It just looks like it's been shot and then color coded with a gray or brown filter over it. The direction just looks so plain throughout. You could have told me anybody directed this film and I would have believed you, which when you're talking David Cronenberg seems shocking. I don't know how I watch a Cronenberg film and don't feel his style infused. I feel the elements that make up his style, but it doesn't feel Cronenberg to me. So yeah, needless to say, I did not like this movie, but I do have to give some shout out to some aspects of the film and give its praise where praise is due. And one particular actor stood out to me, and that was Welkit Bungi, who is fantastic as Detective Kope. He is the government figure of the world who gives context to the political turmoil found within the story. And the film uses him sparingly, but he is a character that is rooted in dishonesty, but it is all meant for the greater good as he sees it. And I found this particular exploration within the film the most satisfying, and I wish this film explored more of his character, because in doing so, it would have given the world further depth. What I'm left with is an actor that I thought was really fantastic in the film, but really just didn't get to do anything. And like all the other actors and characters in this film, are completely underutilized. Overall, Crimes of the Future might be the worst film I've seen all year. There are films that are technically made worse and their stories are less engaging and less interesting. But the thing about this movie is I just wanted to stand up and leave about 10 times, because what I'm left with is a film that has no substance and is just gross. And for this new David Cronenberg film of a director I quite enjoy, that I just could not get on board with this movie, I have to give this film 1 out of 4 stars. I think there is a level of expertise within Cronenberg as a director that keeps ideas at times interesting, but nothing of this movie feels earned. Nothing comes to fruition. It's really just a bunch of nothingness for me, which is really disappointing when you're seeing a director who you quite love. With that all said, that's my review of Crimes of the Future. Are you going to check it out? And if you did, what side of the Cannes audience did you fall out? Did you want to walk out, or did you want to applaud after this movie? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Let me know. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. My name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse. If you like this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.